When we're thinking about Mother's Day, one of the things we often think about is the care and the nurture that mothers show. But I want to focus on an aspect today that is to do with the protection that mothers give to their children. And it's a story that comes from the Bible. It's an unusual story. It's a dramatic story, and it comes from 1 Kings chapter 3. And it's the story of two women who live in a house together. And they're both pregnant. No one else is in the house, but eventually, one of the women gives birth to her baby, and she loves her baby, she sees it, she takes it to bed with her that night, and everything is wonderful. 3 days later, the other lady has a baby as well. She loves her baby, and again takes it to bed with her. They share the same house. But then something very sad happens. The second lady's child dies in the night, and it's a very, very tragic occasion. But even though it's tragic, she does something that she should not do. In her grief, she takes her dead child and swaps it with the child of the mother in the other bed, the child that's still alive. Now, she shouldn't have done that. That was a bad thing to do. And when the first lady wakes up, she's distressed to find the baby next to her is not alive. But as she looks at it closer, she realizes this isn't my baby. And so she says to the other woman, what have you done? She realizes that her baby is with the other woman. And they argue about it, and the second woman won't give up the baby. So eventually they go to get a judgment. Who do they go to? Well, they go to the king. Who is the king? The king is Solomon. Now, straight away, it says something great about Solomon, that he has the time to deal with an issue like this. Because these two ladies were perhaps not of good repute. They hadn't lived a particularly great life, but he wanted to give justice. He wanted to make a wise ruling. And so the baby is laid before him. Here's the one remaining baby, and the two women are fighting in front of the presence of the king. One is saying, no, the baby is mine. The other saying, no, the baby is mine. How is Solomon going to determine this? It's not like he can take a DNA test. He can't figure this out, except for the fact that just earlier in the chapter, he prayed to God. And his prayer to God was not to ask for riches or for long life. He prays to God that God might give him a heart of wisdom to rule the people right. And so he has an idea. And here's Solomon. He asks for something to be brought to him. He asks that he might receive a sword. And the two women must be looking to him and thinking, this is a crazy man. What's he doing? Why has he got a sword? And he raises his sword and he says this. He says, I am going to divide the child in two. Because I can't tell who the true mother is, the only way to determine it is to cut the child in two and give half to each of the two women. Well, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Would he have done it? Of course he wouldn't have done it. Why? Because he was a king after God's own heart. He knew what it was to do the right thing, but he was doing something to get the right response out of the women. And as he raises his sword up, one of the women says, give the child to the other woman. Do not harm the child. Whatever happens, let her have it, as long as the child lives. But the second woman says, yes, cut it in half, so that it will neither be mine nor hers. Well, Solomon got his answer. He knew from that moment who the true mother was. And so he said, give it to the woman who wanted the child to live. You see, we often talk about God as being our eternal Father, and he is our Father. But he's also kind of like our mother as well. He's our eternal parent. And what God says is he says that what this lady does, three things she shows that are like God. The first thing is that she knew who her baby was. She knew how it smelled. She knew how it looked. She knew how it felt. She knew how it moved. She knew how it connected to her. And God says exactly the same thing about us. He says, I know those who are mine. They belong to me. Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice and they listen to me. They respond to me. Jesus says, I know all those that the Lord has given to me. The second thing is that the lady would not abandon her child. She would not give up on it. And God says exactly the same thing to us. He says in Isaiah 49, can a woman forget her baby? Can she forget the child who came from her body? Even if she can forget her children, I cannot forget you. He's saying it's pretty impossible that a mother would forget her baby. But even if that were possible, he's saying, I will never forget you. The Lord will never abandon his people. And the third thing is this, that the woman was prepared to give up her child in order that the greater good was done. Don't we have a God who gave up his only son so that the greater good might be achieved? Don't we have a God who totally understands what it means to lose a child in order that all of us might be brought into his family?